The crystalline spires of the Imperial Tribunal pierced the crimson sky of Zenthara Prime, their surfaces refracting the twin suns into prismatic rainbows across the marble floors. Princess Seraphina of House Valdris stood in the center of the vast circular chamber, her chin held high despite the weight of accusation bearing down upon her. Her iridescent blue skin seemed to glow against the formal white robes of the accused, and her silver hair cascaded like liquid starlight down her back. 12 judges sat in ascending tiers around her, their ancient faces carved from centuries of political maneuvering and cold calculation. At their apex, High Arbiter Corvin's coal-black eyes fixed upon her with the intensity of a dying star. Princess Seraphina Valdris, his voice resonated through the chamber like distant thunder. You stand accused of violating the sacred non-interference decree. The charges are grave: unauthorized intervention in the affairs of a developing species, breach of galactic law, and bringing dishonor upon your noble house. Seraphine's violet eyes never wavered. I acknowledge the charges, High Arbiter, but I do not acknowledge their validity. A ripple of shocked whispers swept through the observation galleries, where hundreds of Zenthari nobles had gathered to witness her judgment. She had expected this reaction. The daughter of a great house did not speak so boldly before the tribunal, unless she had lost all sense of self-preservation. The human colony of New Terra faced extinction, she continued, her melodic voice carrying to every corner of the vast hall. A rogue asteroid was on direct collision course with their planet. Their primitive technology could not deflect it. I diverted my royal cruiser to intercept and destroy the threat. 17 million lives were saved. High Arbiter Corvin's expression remained unmoved. Lives that would have ended according to natural order, Princess. The sacred decree exists to preserve the natural evolution of all species. Your interference has potentially altered the developmental trajectory of an entire civilization. Then, I accept full responsibility for preserving 17 million souls who deserve to live. Seraphina replied without flinching. The judges conferred in their ancient telepathic manner, their mental voices creating a subtle harmonic resonance in the chamber that made the air itself seem to vibrate. Seraphina felt the weight of their collective consciousness pressing against her mental barriers, seeking weakness, seeking regret. They would find neither dot when the silent conference ended. High Arbiter Corvin's mouth curved into something that might have been a smile on a less cruel face. Given your royal blood and the unique nature of your transgression, this tribunal has devised an equally unique punishment. Something cold settled in Seraphine's stomach. Standard punishments for violating the sacred decree ranged from exile to imprisonment to stripping of noble title. The qualifier of unique suggested something far worse. You have shown preference for human affairs, Princess Seraphina. Therefore, you shall be bound to a human. This tribunal sentences you to matrimonial union with a representative of the species you hold in such high regard. The binding will be immediate and permanent. The chamber erupted. Centuries of precedent had never included forced marriage to an alien species, let alone one considered so primitive. Seraphina felt the world tilt slightly, though she maintained her composure through years of royal training. This is unprecedented, she managed. As was your crime, Corvin replied smoothly. The human has already been selected and has accepted the arrangement. The binding ceremony will commence within the hour. 3 systems away, in the detention facility orbiting Kepler Station, Marcus Kane sat in his cell, reviewing the datapad that had just changed his life forever. The holographic image of Princess Seraphina rotated slowly above the device, her alien beauty both captivating and intimidating. Her species wasn't unknown to him. During his years as a merchant captain, he'd encountered Zenthari, traders on several occasions, but he'd never seen one of their royalty. The door to his cell slid open with a pneumatic hiss, admitting Administrator Wells, a thin man whose permanent expression of bureaucratic disdain had probably been surgically attached at birth. Final answer. Cain, Wells said without preamble. Marriage to the Xanthari princess, all charges dropped, and a substantial monetary settlement from both governments. Or spend the next 40 years in a maximum security prison for crimes you may, or may not have actually, committed. Marcus leaned back against the metal wall of his cell. The smuggling charges were fabricated. He'd been set up by a business rival who'd planted contraband in his cargo hold. But proving his innocence would take years of legal battles he couldn't afford, assuming the truth ever came out at all. The princes agreed to this arrangement? He asked. Wells snorted. She's being forced into it as punishment for interfering with human affairs. Apparently, she destroyed an asteroid that would have wiped out New Terra. She saved 17 million people, Marcus said quietly, and now she gets to marry one of them. Wells replied with callous indifference. What's your answer? Marcus studied the holographic princess one more time. There was something in her violet eyes, even in the static image, that spoke of strength and fierce intelligence. Neither of them had chosen this fate, but perhaps they could make the best of an impossible situation. I accept, he said. The matrimonial chamber of House Valdres had been hastily prepared for the unprecedented ceremony. Ancient tapestries depicting the union of great Xanthari houses hung from the walls, their golden threads seeming to mock the political theater about to unfold. Serafina stood on the ceremonial platform, draped in the traditional bonding robes of silver and blue, though today they felt more like a shroud than celebration attire. The massive doors opened with a resonant chime, and her human husband-to-be entered. Marcus Cain was taller than she'd expected from his file, with dark hair and gray-green eyes that seemed to take in every detail of the ornate chamber with the practiced assessment of someone accustomed to evaluating potential threats. He wore what appeared to be a formal human military uniform, black with silver trim, though he'd clearly refused the traditional Xanthari matrimonial cape offered to him. Their eyes met across the chamber, and something unexpected passed between them. Not attraction exactly, but recognition. Two people, caught in circumstances beyond their control, facing an uncertain future with dignity intact. Marcus approached the ceremonial platform with measured steps. When he reached the appropriate distance, he offered a bow that managed to be respectful without being servile. Your Highness, he said, his voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I wish I could say this was the wedding of your dreams, but I suspect we're both making the best of a difficult situation. A ripple of scandalized whispers swept through the assembled nobles. Such informal address to royalty bordered on insult. But Serafina found herself appreciating his honesty. Indeed, she replied coolly, though I prefer honest pragmatism to false sentiment. High Officiate Valen, clearly uncomfortable with the entire proceeding, stepped forward. The ceremony will now commence. This union, though unconventional, shall be binding under imperial law and recognized by both the Xanthari Empire and the Human Alliance. The ancient words of binding flowed around them like a current, each phrase weighted with centuries of tradition. Serafina spoke her responses mechanically, her mind elsewhere, until the moment came for the ritual joining of hands. Your hands, please, Valen instructed, producing the ceremonial bonding cord woven from rare starlight silk. Serafina extended her left hand, her iridescent blue skin seeming to glow in the chamber's soft lighting. Marcus did likewise, his human flesh pale beside hers. As Valen wrapped the shimmering cord around their wrists, bringing their skin into direct contact for the first time, something extraordinary happened. The moment their palms touched, a surge of sensation, unlike anything Serafina had ever experienced, shot through her entire body. It was as if every nerve ending had suddenly awakened, sending cascades of pleasure and awareness racing along her spine. She gasped involuntarily, her violet eyes flying wide as she stared at Marcus in shock. His reaction was equally dramatic. His gray-green eyes darkened with surprise and something deeper, more primal. His hand tightened involuntarily around hers, as the same electric current seemed to flow through him. What ... double quotes, Serafina began, and stopped herself, acutely aware of the hundreds of watching eyes. The bonding cord dissolved into sparkling particles that absorbed into their joined hands, symbolizing the completion of their union. But the strange, tingling energy that had passed between them lingered, making every point of contact between their skin feel hypersensitive and alive. "The union is complete," Valen announced with obvious relief. "You may now retire to the royal apartments that have been prepared for your cohabitation." As the ceremony concluded and the assembled nobles began to file out, Marcus leaned closer to Serafina, his voice low and meant for her ears alone. "Princess," he said quietly, "I think we need to talk about what just happened." Serafina nodded, still struggling to process the intensity of sensation that his simple touch had triggered. Whatever force had just connected them was far beyond anything in her scientific knowledge or experience. As they walked together toward their new shared quarters, neither spoke of the electricity that still seemed to crackle in the air between them. But both knew their arranged marriage had just become infinitely more complicated than either the Zenthari tribunal or the human alliance had anticipated. The royal apartments occupied an entire wing of the imperial palace, its soaring ceilings and crystal windows offering breathtaking views of Zenthara Prime's twin moons. Despite the opulent furnishings and careful attention to both Zenthari and human needs, the space felt more like a gilded cage than a home to Serafina. She paced the main living area, her bare feet silent on the polished marble floor, trying to process the events of the past few hours. The strange sensation that had coursed through her body when Marcus touched her hand still lingered like an echo in her nervous system. Every time she recalled the moment, her skin seemed to tingle with remembered electricity. "You're going to wear a groove in that marble," Marcus observed from where he sat reviewing architectural schematics on a holographic display. He'd changed from his formal uniform into simple human clothing, dark pants, and a fitted shirt that emphasized his lean build. Serafina paused her pacing to glare at him. "This is my wing of the palace. I'll walk where I choose. Technically, it's our wing now," he replied without looking up from the schematics. "And I wasn't complaining about the pacing. Just noting that you seem agitated." "I am not agitated," she snapped, then immediately resumed her restless movement, proving his point. Marcus finally looked up, his gray-green eyes studying her with unsettling intensity. "Want to talk about what happened during the ceremony?" Serafina froze mid-step. "Nothing happened." "Right." His tone suggested he found her denial amusing rather than convincing. "That's why you gasped loud enough for half the nobility to hear, and why your pupils dilated so much your eyes looked almost black." Heat flushed through her blue-tinted skin, a visible darkening that she couldn't hide. "You're imagining things, human, Marcus," he corrected mildly. "And I've been trained to notice physiological responses." "It's useful in my line of work was useful," he amended. Whatever that connection was, we both felt it. Before Serafina could formulate a denial, a soft chime announced a visitor. The door slid open to admit a tall Zenthari woman with elegant features and elaborate golden jewelry that marked her as high nobility. Her coral-colored skin was flawless, her silver hair arranged in intricate braids that had probably taken hours to perfect. "Serafina, darling," the woman said, gliding into the room with practiced grace. "I simply had to come congratulate you on your unique union." Sarah Foster stiffened noticeably. "Lady Celeste, how thoughtful of you to visit." Marcus caught the undercurrent of tension immediately. He stood, offering a polite bow. "Marcus Kane, a pleasure to meet you." "Lady ... Celeste Night Whisper of House Astral," she replied, her violet eyes appraising him with the calculating gaze of someone evaluating livestock. "So you're the human who's captured our dear princess's hand in marriage. Quaint. Not captured. Marcus said evenly. Assigned might be more accurate. Celeste's laugh was like crystal bells, beautiful and slightly sharp. How refreshingly honest. Most humans I've met are so concerned with flattery and political niceties. You're different. Serafina moved subtly closer to Marcus, a protective gesture that surprised them both. What brings you here, Celeste? Surely you have better ways to spend your evening than socializing with criminals and their unfortunate spouses. My dear, Celeste purred, I prefer to think of you both as ... celebrities. The entire nobility is talking about your wedding. Such a romantic tale star-crossed lovers from different worlds, bound together by fate. We're not lovers, Serafina said quickly. Yet, Marcus added with a slight smile that made heat spiral through Seraphon's core. Celeste's eyes sharpened with interest. How delicious. A marriage of convenience that might become something more. I do so love a good romance story. Is there a point to this visit? Serafina asked, her patience wearing thin. Actually, yes. Celeste's demeanor shifted slightly, becoming more serious. I wanted to warn you, darling. Not everyone is pleased with the tribunal's decision. There are those who believe your punishment was too lenient, and others who see your human husband as a threat to Zenthari purity. Marcus tensed, his combat instincts activating. What kind of threat? The political kind, Celeste replied. Your marriage sets a precedent. If a Zenthari princess can be bound to a human, what other boundaries might begin to blur? Some of our more. Traditional nobles find the concept deeply disturbing. Meaning? Serafina demanded. Meaning be careful who you trust. Not everyone who smiles at you wishes you well. Celeste moved toward the door, then paused. Oh, and Serafina? You might want to be more careful about your security arrangements. I noticed several irregularities in the guard rotations today, almost as if someone were studying your patterns. She left with that ominous warning, leaving Marcus and Serafina alone in the suddenly oppressive silence of their gilded prison. Friend of yours? Marcus asked dryly. Former rival, Serafina admitted. We competed for the same position in the diplomatic corps years ago. She lost, and now she's warning us about security threats. Either she's genuinely concerned, or she's playing a deeper game. Serafina studied his face, impressed despite herself by his quick assessment. You don't trust easily. I've learned not to. Trust gets you killed in my experience. He moved to the large crystal windows overlooking the palace gardens. Those irregularities she mentioned, have you noticed anything unusual lately? Before Serafina could answer, a soft explosion echoed from somewhere in the garden below. Both of them rushed to the window, peering down at the elaborate landscaped grounds. Smoke was rising from near the meditation pavilion, where Serafina often spent her evenings. Stay here, Marcus ordered, already moving toward the door. Absolutely not. Serafina followed him without hesitation. That's my garden. If someone is attacking my home, I'm not hiding in my room like a frightened child. They made their way through the palace corridors, Marcus automatically taking point and checking corners with practiced efficiency. Serafina found herself watching the way he moved, fluid, controlled, dangerous. There was clearly much more to her husband than simple merchant captain. The garden was in chaos when they arrived. Several of the ornamental trees were burning, and palace guards were scattered around the perimeter, their weapons drawn, but seeming uncertain where to aim. In the center of the destruction, 3 figures in dark clothing were methodically setting charges on various structures. Saboteurs, Marcus muttered. Professional ones, by the look of it. One of the intruders spotted them and raised a weapon. Marcus reacted instantly, tackling Serafina to the ground as an energy blast scorched the air where she'd been standing. The impact of his body covering hers sent that familiar electric shock through both of them, magnified by the adrenaline of combat. Can you fight? He asked urgently, his face inches from hers. "I'm not helpless," she replied, though her voice was breathless from more than just the fall. Marcus rolled away and came up running, charging the nearest saboteur with empty hands. Serafina watched in amazement as he disarmed the attacker with a series of precise strikes, then used the captured weapon to drive off the other two intruders. When the immediate threat had passed and palace security had finally arrived to secure the scene, Marcus found Serafina standing near the smoldering remains of her favorite reading alcove. "You saved my life," she said quietly. Part of the job description, apparently. But his tone was gentle, and when he moved closer to check her for injuries, the air between them seemed to crackle with potential energy. This wasn't random vandalism, Serafina observed. They were targeting specific locations. My meditation pavilion, my reading alcove, the private entrance I use for morning walks. "Someone's been watching you," Marcus agreed. "Studying your habits, learning your routines." This was personal. But who would want to? She stopped as understanding dawned. The warning. Celeste knew this was going to happen. Maybe, or maybe she's involved. Marcus studied the destruction with a tactical eye. Either way, someone wants you scared, hurt, or dead. And they're not going to stop with garden explosions. As if to prove his point, a small device attached to a nearby tree began beeping rapidly. Marcus grabbed Seraphine's hand without thinking, intending to pull her to safety. The moment their skin made contact, the electric connection flared to life again. But this time, instead of resisting it, she let the sensation wash over her. Time seemed to slow. The world narrowed to the point where their hands joined, where heat and electricity and something indefinable flowed between them. The beeping of the explosive device faded into background noise as Serafina lost herself in the intensity of Marcus's gray-green eyes. "Princess," he said, his voice rough with an emotion she couldn't name. "Serafina," she corrected breathlessly. "My name is Serafina." The explosive device detonated, harmlessly in the distance, apparently a decoy meant to frighten rather than harm. But neither of them noticed. They were too caught up in the realization that the strange connection between them was growing stronger, not weaker with each contact. "We need to figure out what's happening to us," Marcus said finally, though he made no move to release her hand. "Later," Serafina agreed. "Right now, we need to figure out who's trying to kill me." "Us," Marcus corrected. "I'm pretty sure they're targeting both of us now." As they walked back toward the palace, their hands still joined. Neither mentioned how natural the connection felt, or how reluctant they were to break it. But both were acutely aware that their arranged marriage was evolving into something neither the Zenthari tribunal nor the human alliance had anticipated. In the shadows of the garden, a figure watched them go, taking careful note of their joined hands and the obvious intimacy developing between them. Plans would need to be adjusted. The political marriage was becoming something far more dangerous, a genuine bond that could upset the careful balance of power that certain individuals had worked decades to establish. The game was far from over. In fact, it was just beginning. The Imperial Security Council chambers hummed with tension as Serafina and Marcus sat across from a semicircle of high-ranking officials. 3 days had passed since the garden attack, and 2 more attempts on their lives had followed: poisoned chalice at dinner and a malfunctioning gravity field in their private quarters that would have crushed them both if Marcus hadn't noticed the subtle fluctuations in time. Ambassador Thorne Blackwater dominated the far end of the table, his imposing figure draped in the deep purple robes of his office. His amber eyes held a calculating intelligence that made Marcus's instincts prickle with warning. Something about the ambassador's perfectly composed demeanor felt wrong, like a predator wearing the mask of civilization. "These attacks are deeply concerning," Thorne said, his melodious voice carrying just the right note of official worry. "Princess Serafina, Your marriage was meant to symbolize a new era of cooperation between our species. Instead, it seems to have made you both targets. Made us targets, Marcus corrected, or revealed that we already were. Thorne's amber gaze shifted to him, with what might have been irritation flickering beneath the diplomatic mask. I'm not sure I understand your implication, Mr. Kane. Marcus is suggesting, Serafina interjected smoothly, that these attacks might not be random responses to our marriage. They're too coordinated, too well informed about our movements and routines. An intriguing theory, Thorne mused. But surely you're not suggesting a conspiracy within the palace itself? Our security is beyond reproach. Marcus leaned forward slightly, studying the ambassador's micro-expressions. Your security has failed 3 times in 5 days. Either it's incompetent, or someone with access is feeding information to our enemies. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The other council members exchanged uncomfortable glances, clearly unused to such direct accusations being leveled in these chambers. You speak very boldly for someone whose own past is questionable, Thorne replied with silky menace. Perhaps we should examine your background more closely. A merchant captain accused of smuggling, suddenly elevated to royal consort. How convenient that these attacks began after your arrival. Seraphine's skin darkened with anger. Are you suggesting my husband is behind the attempts on my life? He saved me from each one. How heroic, Thorne said with a smile that never reached his eyes. Almost as if he knew they were coming. Marcus remained perfectly still, but Serafina could feel the coiled tension in his body like a held breath. When he spoke, his voice was deadly quiet. Ambassador, I've met your type before. Politicians who deflect suspicion by casting it on others. You're working very hard to make me the villain in this story. I'm simply exploring all possibilities, Thorne replied smoothly. Then let's explore this one, Marcus said, producing a small data crystal from his pocket. 3 nights ago, I couldn't sleep, so I took a walk through the palace archives. Interesting reading material, their security logs, financial records, communication transcripts. Thorne's composed expression flickered almost imperceptibly. Palace records require clearance to access. I'm very good at finding things, Marcus said with a dangerous smile. For instance, I found records showing unusual financial transfers from your personal accounts to several shell companies in the Outer Rim territories. The same territories where those saboteurs likely originated. The ambassador's amber eyes hardened. You're making very serious accusations based on circumstantial evidence. I'm just exploring whole possibilities, Marcus replied, throwing Thorne's words back at him. Before Thorne could respond, alarms began blaring throughout the palace. Emergency lighting bathed the council chambers in pulsing red as automated voices announced a security breach in the royal wing. Our quarters, Serafina breathed, rising from her chair. Marcus was already moving, but as they reached the chamber's exit, Ambassador Thorne's voice stopped them. Princess, perhaps this would be an excellent time for you to accept protective custody. My personal guards could escort you to a secure facility while we investigate these threats more thoroughly. Something in his tone made both Marcus and Serafina freeze. The offer sounded reasonable, even logical, but there was an undertone of satisfaction in Thorne's voice, as if events were unfolding exactly as he'd planned. No, Serafina said firmly. I'll return to my quarters with my husband. That may not be wise, Thorne pressed. These attacks are escalating. Next time, you might not be so fortunate. Marcus stepped closer to Serafina, close enough that their hands brushed and the familiar electric connection sparked between them. In that moment of contact, he caught a flash of something not quite a vision, but a certainty that felt like intuition on fire. We appreciate your concern, Marcus said evenly, but we'll handle our own security from now on. As they left the council chambers, Serafina whispered urgently, Did you really find evidence against Thorne? Some, Marcus admitted, but not enough to prove anything. The data crystal was mostly fabricated a bluff to see how he'd react. He reacted like someone with a lot to hide. They reached their quarters to find the security breach had been a false alarm, or rather, a sophisticated decoy designed to draw them away from the council meeting. Their rooms had been searched, though whoever had done it was skilled enough to leave everything apparently undisturbed. "We're looking for something specific," Marcus observed, running his fingers along barely visible disturbances in the dust patterns on various surfaces. Serafina moved to a decorative wall panel that looked identical to dozens of others throughout the room. But when she pressed a hidden sequence, it slid aside to reveal a small concealed compartment. "My mother's research," she explained, withdrawing a collection of data crystals and handwritten notes. She was investigating genetic compatibility between Xanthari and other species before she died. "I've been continuing her work in secret." Marcus examined one of the data crystals with growing amazement. "This is why we feel that connection when we touch. It's not just attraction. It's some kind of biological compatibility your mother discovered. More than compatibility," Serafina said quietly. "According to her research, certain genetic markers can create what she called resonance bonding between individuals of different species. It's extremely rare, but when it occurs, the bond becomes stronger over time, eventually creating an almost telepathic connection. And someone doesn't want that research to see the light of day," Marcus concluded. "Think about the political implications. If Xanthari and human genetics are naturally compatible, it undermines the entire foundation of your empire's isolationist policies." Before Serafina could respond, the lights in their quarters cut out completely. Emergency power failed to activate, leaving them in absolute darkness. "Move," Marcus whispered urgently, grabbing her hand and sending electricity surging between them. But this time, the connection was different, stronger, more complete. In the darkness, Serafina could suddenly sense Marcus's location with perfect precision, as if they shared a single nervous system. "I can feel where you are," she breathed in amazement. "Same here. The bond it's adapting to help us survive." They moved through their quarters with impossible coordination, Marcus leading them toward the hidden exit Seraphine's mother had installed years ago. Behind them, they could hear soft footsteps entering their rooms, multiple intruders moving with military precision. The hidden passage led to a maintenance shaft that connected to the palace's ancient tunnel system. As they crawled through the narrow space, their enhanced connection allowed them to move in perfect silence, each anticipating the other's movements instinctively. "Where does this lead?" Marcus whispered. "The old ceremonial chambers beneath the palace. They've been abandoned for centuries." When they finally emerged into a vast underground chamber lit only by phosphorescent fungi, they found themselves in what appeared to be an ancient temple. Towering stone pillars supported a ceiling lost in shadows, and elaborate carvings covered every surface. "We can't stay here long," Marcus said, checking the entrance they'd used. "They'll find this passage eventually. Then we need answers before they do." Serafina activated one of her mother's data crystals on a portable viewer. "If Ambassador Thorn is behind the attacks, we need to understand why." The holographic display filled with genetic charts and research notes. As they studied the data together, their hands touching to maintain the enhanced connection, a picture began to emerge that was far more complex and dangerous than either had imagined. "Look at this," Serafina pointed to a particular genetic sequence. "My mother wasn't just researching compatibility. She was investigating the possibility that Xanthari and humans share a common ancestral origin. We're not different species that happen to be compatible. We're branches of the same evolutionary tree that diverged millennia ago." Marcus stared at the implications. "If that's true, then the entire foundation of Xanthari superiority is a lie. Your empire isn't more evolved, it's just different. And the sacred non-interference decree becomes irrelevant if humans and Xanthari are essentially the same species at the genetic level. A slow hand clap echoed through the ancient chamber, causing them both to spin toward the sound. Ambassador Thorn emerged from the shadows, flanked by a dozen armed figures in the dark clothing they'd seen during the garden attack. "Brilliant deduction," Thorn said with genuine admiration. "Your mother was equally perceptive, Princess." Unfortunately, she was also equally naive about the political realities of her discoveries. Serafina felt ice form in her veins. "You killed her." "I protected the stability of the Empire," Thorn corrected. "Her research would have destroyed everything we've built. The hierarchical structure of Zenthari society, our technological advantages, our rightful place as the dominant species in this sector, all of it depends on maintaining the fiction that we are inherently superior." Marcus stepped protectively in front of Serafina, though his eyes never left Thorn's face. "So you've been orchestrating the attacks to stop us from discovering the truth." "Initially, yes. But your marriage has created an unexpected complication." Thorn's amber eyes gleamed with malicious intelligence. "The resonance bonding you've developed, it's not just rare. It's the key to unlocking the genetic locks your mother built into her research. Only a bonded pair can access the full data, which is why you couldn't just steal the crystals," Serafina realized. "You need us alive and bonded to unlock her complete findings." "Precisely. So I'm prepared to offer you both a choice." Thorn gestured, and his soldiers raised their weapons. "Cooperate with my research. Help me unlock your mother's data so I can suppress it permanently, and I'll ensure you both live comfortably under my protection. Refuse, and you'll die here in this forgotten temple, just another casualty of the terrorists who have been targeting you." Marcus felt Seraphine's hand slip into his, their connection flaring to life with renewed intensity. Through their bond, he sensed her decision before she spoke. "We refuse," she said with quiet dignity. Thorn's expression darkened. "I was hoping you would be more reasonable." "There's just one problem with your plan," Marcus said, his grip tightening on Seraphine's hand until their connection burned like fire through both their nervous systems. "And what's that?" Marcus smiled with lethal confidence. "You assumed we came here alone." The ancient chamber erupted in chaos as palace guards poured through multiple entrances, their weapons trained on Thorn soldiers. In the confusion that followed shouting voices, flashing energy weapons, the clatter of running feet, Marcus pulled Serafina behind one of the massive stone pillars. "How?" she gasped. "I may have been a merchant captain," Marcus replied, checking the security beacon he'd activated from his pocket, "but I was also intelligence trained. I've been feeding information to loyal palace guards since the second attack." Around them, the battle was brief but decisive. Thorn's soldiers, caught by surprise and outnumbered, surrendered quickly. But as the dust settled and palace security moved to arrest the ambassador, Thorn's voice carried one final threat across the chamber. "You think this ends with me?" he called out as restraints were placed on his wrists. "There are others, Princess. Others who will never allow your mother's research to see light. Your bonding makes you powerful, but it also makes you dangerous to the natural order." As he was led away, Serafina leaned against Marcus, suddenly exhausted by the night's revelations. "It's not over, is it?" "No," Marcus agreed, his arm tightening around her. "But whatever comes next, we'll face it together." Their bond pulsed with warmth and certainty, no longer something strange and frightening, but a source of strength that would carry them through whatever dangers lay ahead. In the ancient chamber, where the truth of their shared heritage had finally been revealed, Princess Serafina of House Valders and Marcus Kane stood together, no longer strangers bound by political necessity, but partners united by choice and strengthened by a connection that transcended the boundaries of species and empire.